for all your participation, and of course to the production team for putting it together. Here's Mudupi Makhalimele with your latest news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Thanks, Sakina. The top stories this hour. South Africa aims to be off the grey list by next year, and the AKA murder case is postponed. A very good afternoon. South Africa has only managed to address 5 of the 22 action items set out by the Financial Action Task Force last year. The country had aimed to be off the grey listing by 2025. According to a statement released by National Treasury, the 5 items that the country has addressed relate to criminalizing terrorist financing and increasing the resources of anti-money laundering investigations, amongst others. Notando Makutulela reports.
In a statement, National Treasury says while South Africa is on track to address all the outstanding action items, it remains a tough challenge to address all 17 of the remaining action items by February 2025. Treasury says all relevant agencies and authorities will need to continue to demonstrate significant improvements and ensure that such improvements are sustained.
Minister in the Presidency Khumbudzo Ntshavheni says South Africa stands ready to host the G20 summit next year. This as the country will also take over the G20 presidency in the same year. Ntshavheni was speaking at the post-cabinet briefing in Pretoria today. She says the country is confident that it'll deliver a successful G20 summit, just like it did with events such as the BRICS summit last year.
Cabinet is confident that South Africa will deliver a successful G20 summit, as it has done with previous major events such as the BRICS summit, the African Growth and Opportunity Act Forum, and the G20 presidency presents South Africa with an opportunity to champion the aspirations of the emerging markets. As it hosts the G20, South Africa's participation in the forum will continue to be guided by the country's commitment to advance national interest as well as those of the African continent.
The case of the 5 suspects linked to the murder of rapper Keenan aka Forbes and his friend Tebello Tibbs Motswane has been postponed to the 6th of March in the Durban Magistrates Court. They face 10 counts, including 2 charges of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and unlawful possession of firearms. The state asked that the matter be postponed for further investigations and to allow them time to finalize the extradition processes of the 2 suspects who were arrested in Eswatini. The eThekwini municipality has obtained an interdict against striking workers as the city is experiencing a 3rd consecutive day of disruptions. The municipality says the court has ordered striking workers and SAMU members that they may not disrupt services, intimidate non-striking workers and service providers, or instigate riotous behavior. Municipal spokesperson Kukusi Salana says the strike is unprotected and no memorandum of demands have been received as yet. She says the municipality is calling on law enforcement agencies to adopt a no-nonsense approach.
eThekwini municipality has successfully obtained a court interdict against striking workers, affirming its commitment to the safety and security of law-abiding residents. The court's decision follows an unauthorized and unlawful labor unrest that erupted from 27 February and has impacted on the city's operations and service delivery. The municipality is extremely concerned about the violence accompanied by intimidation and damage to property caused in the name of striking workers.
Firefighters at Nelson Mandela Bay continue to battle the raging veld fire at Sardinia Bay, with the focus shifting to saving the domestic animals in the area. The persistent strong winds continue to be a challenge for the firefighters as they try to contain the blaze. These residents have expressed concerns about their properties and the domestic animals in their area.
I think the biggest fear we have right now is all our animals, making sure that we're able to either evacuate them in time, being notified in time to evacuate them, and just keeping our animals safe. That's literally our main goal in Sardinia Bay.
But yeah, it's not just our property, it's down the road. My friend's horse is just down the road, so from here on we're heading down there to go check on her horse.
And Palestinian media sources say dozens of people have been killed while waiting for food aid at a roundabout in northern Gaza as Israel continues its offensive against Hamas. A video posted by the Palestinian press agency shows several bodies laying on a truck. The Israeli military has yet to comment. The BBC's Yolanda Nell.
Hamas and Israeli delegations are still in Qatar trying to look at the detail of a deal, this potential 40-day truce that we're looking at. There is public pressure in Israel, a lot of support for those hostage families. At the same time, a lot of support for the ongoing war, for Israel's pledge to dismantle Hamas in Gaza. On the Palestinian side, just dire humanitarian conditions. We're expecting very soon this official announcement that the numbers killed, according to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza, has surpassed 30,000.
The top story at 1 o'clock, South Africa has only managed to address 5 of the 22 action items set out by the Financial Action Task Force last year. It is the full circle now. For SAFM News, Bridget Masinga.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
You will never walk alone.
Oh yeah, I fully concur.
Your screen is more than marvelous with Liverpool FC TV, where you can catch highlights of both women and men's teams from the junior stars to the elite level. Conversations with the playing personnel and mentors, including the latest updates about this massive football brand.
The Reds. Witness Liverpool FC TV on your home of sporting excellence.
Your front seat awaits you every Monday at 9 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus catch-up service and SABCSport.com.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Coming up on the book reading, Why Men Had Women.
Many girls also experience a deficiency of father love. Girls need loving adult men as much as boys do. They need present, caring fathers to show them how to relate to men healthily and authentically, whether in platonic or sexual ways, in their own adult lives.
How I'd love to dance with my father again.
Catch the book reading on SFM Monday to Thursday at 11:45 on the Talking Point.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Nabachana bangi bangabele bandifuna imali bu bathi vele goli ikhole taxini nimva esithi bengaphuma eTV lo uthi makuthini yayasiphelelwa ngamandla oqhubeka at least yazi kufudumele ekhaya
Sohlangana eBhayi, sobona
Hey, Tina, 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 Sia, Salana, Mama. Haye, lihamile, suhlangana ebayi, subonana ebayi. Haye, lihamile, suhlangana ebayi, subonana ebayi.
It is Amifaku coming through with the Ibai. That is how we kick off the show on this fine Thursday afternoon. I don't know where the week is going, but it's definitely galloping at a fast pace, ushering in March tomorrow, which means we are just about ready to wrap up the first quarter of the year. I mean, it almost feels as if it was just yesterday that Aldrin and everybody was on leave. And now we are saying that we are firmly 60 days into the new year. What a wow. Well, 60 days plus into the new year. It's the 29th of February today. And you know that primarily we are an all-girls team on the Full Circle. And one of my producers today took the liberty of reminding me that it is a leap year. So this is the reminder to all you ladies that is the 29th of February today. If you're finding yourself single and unattached but have a keen eye on somebody, you've got the rest of the day to make your move. If you believe in that, that is to say. So you've got the rest of the day to make your move today, and who knows what might happen on this leap year. We've got lots by way of conversation coming your way. Whilst you think on that, we've got a lot of conversation coming your way. We're going to be catching up with the folks at Rishedze Project, who undertook a survey with just under 14,000 people who fell into the categories of those who used drugs, sex workers, as well as the LGBTQI plus community. And this survey was really to just get a sense and a feel for some of their lived experiences in as far as accessing and engaging our public health system. And they'll unpack for us exactly what came out of that particular survey. We're also going to be celebrating 22 years of Jacana Media today. Shish, it's been just over 2 decades of this media giant doing what they do and contributing to the media space in the country. Stages, pages, screens and more is also coming up. And then on the other side of 2 o'clock, we are going to be in conversation around ICASA's revision of political advertisement regulations in light of the upcoming elections, which are coming up on the 29th of May. 061-410-4107 is our WhatsApp line if you'd like to send through a voice note, or 086-000-2032 is the number you can call us on if you want to go live with us. Let's take a quick break and then we'll come right back.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Pyramids FC trust their secret plan will trouble their Mauritanian visitors. But FC Nwadibu say they have traveled with the correct tools to rearrange the pyramids. This is the CAF Champions League. Do not miss out on Africa's beautiful game. Pyramids FC versus FC Nwadibu on Saturday 2 March at 3 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
What can you tell us about the 2 people that you're holding? Why were they arrested?
According to our knowledge, these 2 suspects are wanted in South Africa. We have documents in our possession stating that these suspects are in the South African Police Service radar for murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and illegal possession of firearms. And it is not in our jurisdiction to say what cases they have been involved in. At the moment, we are processing their extradition so that they can go back and face their matters.
Nosipho Mnguni is the Deputy Chief of Police for Information and Communications and Assistant Superintendent in the Royal Swazi.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
So Rishidze is going to be launching a brand new report that's highlighting the poor quality of health services that's provided to people who use drugs, sex workers, and of course the LGBTQI plus community in South Africa. And this is the third annual State of Healthcare report of its kind. And we thought we'd catch up with, of course, Rishidze project coordinator Ndimbuo Rambao and find out more about this survey and perhaps help us understand some of the findings that came out of this survey. Ndimbuo, how are you doing this afternoon?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us. We are doing quite well. We're out in Mamelodi launching the report.
Fantastic stuff. Let's get an understanding. This is a report that interviewed and engaged just under 14,000 people. And what was sort of the, I guess, the importance of getting this qualitative analysis from these folks?
Okay, so just as a context, as Richidze, we monitor close to 400 public healthcare facilities across 8 provinces that are PEPFAR supported across 27 districts. And the KP drive, what we call it when we collect this data amongst key population, took place between July and September last year in 2023. And we spoke to over 14,000 key populations across 8 provinces. And the methodology we use is that we use the snowball methodology where we speak to one KP and we ask for other KPs to share their numbers so that we can hear the experiences of KPs in accessing public health care. So we have found that in collecting the data, not only do we have qualitative data, but the survey is actually quantitative in nature. And we add on with qualitative data, which is one-on-one interviews that we have with key pops as well.
And in terms of the findings that have come out from these engagements?
So we've got different types of findings in terms of the different KP groups. Specifically, as you mentioned, we spoke to people who use drugs, trans people, sex workers, and gay, bisexual, and men who have sex with men. And we are finding that very few people reported that facility staff were always friendly and professional towards key populations. Even today at our event, we have key pops who are telling us that, as a person who uses drugs, I have been told straight to my face that as a nurse, I'm not going to touch you until you go and you take a bath. I will not remove those stitches that you have due to an injury or, any kind of wound care because you have not bathed. So people using drugs indicate that we still have our dignity. We might be homeless, but we do also need public health care as it is enshrined in the Constitution as well.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I exclaimed there in shock, but I guess I'm in shock because some parts of us engage with the healthcare system from a privileged perspective, and these kinds of stories that have been highlighted by some of your participants are not, they're not isolated incidences. These are the kinds of unfortunate tales that we often hear being brought to the fore about the lack of compassion within our healthcare services.
Indeed. And I mean, these are experiences of sex workers, for example, who are told you will stand in the back of the queue. You will not get any kind of services because when you chose to be umakosha, you want to sleep with our children, you want to spread this HIV. And these things are done in a sense that it strips away a person's dignity, but it strips away your privacy and confidentiality. This is being said in front of a waiting room and people are waiting to access their services. But now the whole community now knows that you are a sex worker, which is something you might not have disclosed to other people. So in terms of just disgraceful confidentiality and violations, these still remain common amongst KPs who are trying to access services. In some instances, KPs have indicated that there's just no privacy. Sometimes I must consult a nurse with someone else sitting in there, but because I'm a KP, I'm meant to take it because of the sexuality that I chose to align with. So there's also key issues around violations of privacy that are coming up.
And this is not the first time that Rishidze has undertaken this report, right? This, in fact, marks the third annual one of its kind.
This is the third edition of the report, and what we are finding in the data is that things really have worsened, specifically in provinces like KZN and the Eastern Cape. We're seeing quite a lot of bad attitudes towards key populations, to an extent that key populations have even been denied ARVs, STI treatment, or even contraceptives. So being denied services overall it's humiliating to a human being, but it's also unjust and a violation of people's rights to health as well.
Absolutely, and that was definitely the lead up to this, to ask that over the three installations or the three editions of the report, are you noticing sort of persistent patterns and challenges that are either worsening, as you've just said, things are worsening, or things that are persistent, and maybe even perhaps areas, whether it's certain provinces or nationwide, where issues that you highlighted in the first report are maybe being addressed and you can see some kind of improvement, with this being the third one?
So, as Richidze, when we do present this data, we present it to the National Department of Health, we present it to PEPFAR, to the Global Fund, and we also come up with recommendations and solutions. Some of those recommendations have started to be put in. For example, the department has launched centers of excellence. But what we're also saying is that these centers of excellence should actually have the services that KPs need. For example, people who use drugs, very few are often able to access medication like methadone. In terms of gender-affirming care for trans people, is there hormone therapy available at the facilities? Is the facility actually welcoming to trans people, using people's correct pronouns, for example, and acknowledging a trans person as a person overall? So across the years, we've just found that some things have tended to just get a bit worse. We understand the department has put in things like sensitizations and, trying to get more KPs on board, but there's just so much more that needs to be done if we want to reach our 95 targets. And we can't leave KPs behind in that mission to want to reach all of those targets as well.
Yeah, and let's also talk a little bit about the access to, or let's further explore the access to medical treatment in these circumstances. Because, if you're walking into a hospital and already you are marginalized, you are prejudiced, you are judged against, I can imagine that then even accessing much needed medical treatment, or in the instance perhaps maybe of sex workers who might require things to make their work safer, whether it's condoms, whether it's lubricants, whatever it is, it becomes far more difficult.
Indeed, it does. So when we look at issues around condoms and lubricants, we've only found that only 64% of facilities said that they provided lubricant for HIV prevention. And at only 28% of the sites, they actually have it available. And in trying to access that lubricant, it becomes very difficult for not only sex workers, but also for gay men, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men, to actually get them, because you are shouted at. Why are you taking so many? Ama condom amangaga, wenzani ama condom, so many condoms. And just not being able to access those things. For example, sometimes you go into a clinic and condoms are sitting at the reception. And everyone is watching you as you're taking those condoms. So we've also asked that condoms be placed in private spaces, in bathrooms, for example, along with the lubricant, and that the department ensures that lubricant is always available at the facilities, because KPs indicate that sometimes it's just a stock out. Sometimes you go to the clinic once, you go for the second time, they're like, no, we don't have lubricant. There's a stock out at the moment.
And, as you speak, I feel as if this sort of the environment and the treatment within the healthcare system also speaks volumes to some of the issues that we experience in our communities, and some of the ways that perhaps we don't have acceptance, social acceptance of the various people that we live with.
That is true. So to a certain extent, you hear KP saying, sometimes I don't want to go to the clinic, simply because when we even enter the clinic, the first thing we do is pray. And the minute we've prayed, I now know my nurse's religious convictions. And how do I now start indicating that I have an STI on my anus, for example? How do I start explaining this to someone who might not understand it and might not understand me? And then that is where the lack of treatment then comes, where I'm not going to help you because you shouldn't be having sex with other men. Why are you selling your body, as stated by some of the sex workers who are in the meeting with us today? So those things do come in and have a very big impact on how KPs access service or given services.
We just got a message from Freddie, the truck driver. You know, Freddie, you're one of the few listeners on the station whose name and designation is saved on our WhatsApp line. And he just wanted you to, I think he missed the explanation on what KPs is, and I don't want to do it injustice. So maybe if you could just double back for us quickly as to why you make reference to the participants as KPs.
Okay, so when we say key populations, we're meaning these are key vulnerable groups who are susceptible to getting or being infected by HIV due to the sexual practices that they might be taking into consideration. So it's very important that these KP groups be taken care of, so that when it comes to our 95 targets, so those people who know their HIV status, those who are on treatment, we are able to carry them along so that we can, beat and reach the targets that we need, and also be able to give key populations, people who are having, different kind of sex, the right HIV prevention tools. So when we talk about lubricant, that is an HIV prevention tool. When we talk about PrEP, that is also an HIV prevention tool, which we are saying that PrEP should be, utilized and be given and offered to key populations when you are testing negative when you go to the facilities.
Yeah. Freddie, I hope that you got the gist of that. And just in closing, you did mention that the data that's correlated from this report is presented to the health department and, of course, other stakeholders within the healthcare sector. And are you then able to just follow up with the year unfolding to see what they are taking into consideration, what they're focusing on, or perhaps what they are discarding as irrelevant for the task at hand?
Yeah, so today, once we are done giving the presentation, they will also come in and give their feedback and give us a few commitments on what can be done in rapid time. If there are any community members who are in the tent as we speak, who can be helped, and we get an immediate response. So as the year progresses, we also do check in with the departments and see if all of those commitments that they gave to us as Richidze, are they really implementing them? Is this working? And then again, in July, we'll be doing another data collection drive to see if anything has really improved, because in some instances we do speak to the same people. We also did we ask you the similar questions last year, so we are able to kind of track and see if there's been an improvement across the years as we have been speaking to people.
Yeah. Ndibuo, thank you so much for the time today. That was Ndibuo Rambao, and she is the coordinator with the Richidze project undertaking this particular survey. Freddie, I hope we are clear now with KPs as it references key populations, and those are people in sort of pertaining to this survey, people who use narcotics, sex workers, the LGBTQI plus community, and men who engage in sex with other men. It's just gone 1:30. Mudupi is standing by with the headline news.
Thank you very much, Sister Bridget, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, National Treasury says that South Africa has addressed 5 of the 22 action items set out by the Financial Action Task Force last year. The Auditor General has raised concerns with the Public Enterprises Committee that she has not received the report on the revised valuation of SAA's assets. And Russian President Vladimir Putin has delivered his annual State of the Nation address in Moscow, explicitly referring to his country's 2-year-long invasion of Ukraine as a war. Details of these and other stories at 2.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
We are catching up with the commercial director at Jacana Media now, Shay Heidenrich, as Jacana Media turns 22 years old. And this year they're going to be empowering city kids at pre and primary school through donations from their guests in celebration. How are you doing this afternoon, Shay?
So good, Bridget. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you. I mean, 22 years in the media space, publishing some well-known household titles is no easy feat. And as you reflect back on this 22-year journey as a group, what are some of the things that I guess you're most proud of, whether by way of accomplishments or just the contribution that you've made to the space?
Well, we're nothing without our authors, of course, and we're enormously proud of them. Many of them have won very prestigious awards. And, yeah, I mean, it would take a long time to enumerate on individual successes. But, yes, I think we're nothing without the authors. We have... very recently just had shortlisted candidates for the Big Literary Awards. We've had 2 scooping prizes this year. And, we soldier on and participate actively within the literary space.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys are responsible, for a whole host of publications, or rather titles that you've published through the years. Some celebrity-inspired books. Of recent mind is the book by Miss South Africa, Shuru, that comes to mind. Dearest Mariki by Louisa Zondo, Ricky Rix's mom, and so many other publications. I mean, there's too many to even list. But in terms of just that, and I know you said, it would be a daunting task, but I'm pretty sure, just top of the mind, that there are either titles or moments that stand out for y'all as publishers that really just mark particular periods within your journey and chronicle, very specific conversations that you must have been proud to be a part of.
Yeah, and I think with those particular authors that you've highlighted, we are given access to a whole different world. Shuri has published for children, and he has a picture book for much younger readers as well as a 6 to 9 year reader. Thembi Katlana, our superstar Banyana soccer player, she equally has published 2 books, one for much older readers and for children. Gregory Makoma, the celebrated choreographer and dancer, recently published his memoir in 2 formats, one for children, one for teenagers. And the opportunity we have through those particular authors' reach is to connect with a much wider audience who might never have actually been exposed to reading in any big way, nor necessarily owned a book of their own. So enormously exciting to be able to get books into the hands of young South African readers.
I can imagine. And by way of the business of publishing, how has it changed in 22 years? There's been the sort of the narrative that has run that says that books are no longer fashionable. People prefer reading through tablets and digital. The attention span has gotten shorter. And obviously, somehow, all of this digital evolution and digital sort of integration has affected the business of publishing?
It has to a degree. I don't think it's been as overwhelming in the South African context. And Bekana is in a unique position in that we're independent. We don't have to subscribe to a particular publishing directive. Our payoff line, in fact, is we publish what we like. We publish African authors. We do have our books converted into e-format for those people who prefer to read on either a Kindle or any other e-book device. So in terms of how it's shifted, I think, COVID probably drove people a lot more to online platforms than what we had originally experienced. And that was a great incentive for us to also get online with our website and make sure that our books had all these conversions. And we just more and more want to reach beyond the traditional bookstores because they are obviously bricks and mortar and they can't move directly to the customer. So we're constantly looking for creative ways to actually integrate in new communities.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have a bricks and mortar bookstore at your disposal.
Yeah. So 22 years and you are celebrating, and part of the celebrations are inclusive of you empowering City Kids pre and primary school. Tell us a bit about that initiative.
So City Kids is one of our partners in that we take authors to present and read books to the learners, who number around 875 at the moment. And it's been an incredibly successful outing for any author that has gone to the school, and very impactful just to understand, again, taking books to the learners and to readers who don't necessarily have that access. So we'll continue with that relationship that we have. We can see the impact immediately when our authors are at the school. The children just shine. They shine anyway, but they have an extra sparkle when they're able to meet the hero who has authored a book and to engage and actually, figure out how one becomes an author even. From having a particular talent, how do you harness it and how do you put that into a book and reach the rest of the world?
Yeah.
So with that relationship, we understand that City Kids is an inner city Johannesburg school. They're private, but only because they offer a particular quality of education that they need to privatize. And it's very affordable. Nevertheless, they don't yet have a school library. They've got fantastic reading corners. And as I say, they've got activations where authors can go to the school and do readings and presentations. So we know that they're a school with ambition, a school with great verve and sus and love of reading, and we'd just like to continue to support that and to get more books into their reading corners and into the set work curriculum.
Yeah. Well, listen, Shay, congratulations to the first 22. And here's to the next as you continue to really introduce us to some phenomenal authors, as well as tell some incredible South African stories with this constantly evolving society of ours. That was Shay Haydenrugh, who's the commercial director at Jacana Media. And they've really got under their belt some phenomenal titles. There's I Am Shudu by a former Miss South Africa, Shudu Fatso. Of course, she's got 2 titles with Jacana. She's just released a new book, I think, late last year. From Debt to Riches, which is one of my favorite go-to books when it comes to financial matters, by Phumelela Nduma. We actually had her on the show last year sometime. Riri Klabi has also released her titles under Jacana, and Endings and Beginnings is another one, A Story of Healing by Riri. Dudu's Basket is also one of their titles, and this one is by Bianca Stewart. It's also a children's book, and they've also released the likes of Confessions of a Stratcom Hitman by Paul Erasmus, as well as Apartheid, Guns and Money is another incredible title that I think most South Africans have read. That did actually quite well for them. It's just gone 20 to 2 o'clock right here on The Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. Let's take a quick break and then we'll come right back.
Gauteng MEC for Finance, Jacob Mamabolo, will present the budget to the legislature on the 5th of March at 10 a.m. The MEC will reflect on how public funds were used in the last 5 years to provide services to the people. He will further outline the priorities of the Gauteng government and how the budget will be allocated to support economic growth, create jobs, fight crime, and improve the living conditions of people in the townships, informal settlements, and hostels. This message is brought to you by the Gauteng Provincial Government, growing Gauteng together.
Diable Noir can't wait to demonstrate to Sekhukhune United that what they did to them in Limpopo will not prevail in Brazzaville. Meanwhile, Babina Nogo targets another victory against Yakadia Mama when they close the group stage curtain. This is the CAF Confederation Cup. Catch Diable Noir FC and Sekhukhune United FC on Sunday 3 March at 6 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Beyond the Headline on SAFM.
With the 7th suspect, is it known whether the person handed themselves over like the 6th suspect?
He did not hand himself over. I wouldn't say they handed themselves over. It was because our team was hard at work in tracing the suspects. We need to commend the Eswatini police for cooperating with us. They executed the warrant, and now it's a matter of extradition processes.
Brigadier Tlandamate is the spokesperson for the police, and this is in relation to the murder of Keenan, aka Forbes, as well as Tibelo Tips Mutswane.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampier on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m. Stages, pages, screens, and more on The Full Circle.
It is indeed stages, pages, screens, and more. And we are looking at Truth Be Told, which is a 6-part documentary series that's going to put South Africa's truth and reconciliation process under the microscope. Oh, how exciting. We are catching up with the documentary filmmaker, Enver Samuel, on the line. How are you doing this afternoon, Enver?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, and I hope we can engage in a fruitful discussion.
I'm sure we shall indeed. When we talk TRC, it's always one of those polarizing conversations, right? Because there are people who believe as though the process was cathartic, and then there are those who say that the process did not bring any kind of justice and conclusion for them. And so I can imagine embarking on telling the story must have unearthed quite a lot of emotion from those who partook in sharing their experiences and analysis, both personal and otherwise.
Yes, you hit it on the head exactly. I mean, for many, it's TRC. Did it work or did not work? There are instances in the 6 stories where, for some families, to a certain extent, it worked, and I'll give you an example of that. For example, with Pila Portia and Rwandwe, who was MK commander, abducted from Swaziland and taken back to KZN, tortured and then killed, but then buried in an unmarked grave for 10 years. Her family had no idea where she was. But when the security police went to the TRC in search of amnesty, they then confided where she was buried. So her family were finally able to have some closure. For a decade, almost a decade, they didn't know where she was. And ironically, it ended up she was like literally 40 kilometers from home. But they had no clue. They thought she could have been in exile. They hadn't returned home.
Wow.
So to a certain extent, this gave her closure. They only found out, that they had a grandson, Portia's parents, after almost 9 years, because she was in exile, and when she was killed, he was 5 months old. So they had no clue about him. So certain circumstances it worked, but then a lot of the families complain bitterly about no action. Nothing happened. The TRC, that was like in 1996. We like 3 decades later, and some families are still looking for justice, compensation, recognition. So for a lot of the families from the 6 that I interviewed, are still quite bitter about the slow process of the wheels of justice.
But in a sense, does the documentary give, and from what you tell us about Portia's story, it gives a sense that the documentary allows for, the remains of those who were brutally murdered, whose stories were never told, to really tell us from beyond the grave, to tell us from the unknown what happened, or to shed light on what might have happened.
Yes, exactly. In a sense, the bones of memory are stirring, and through the series and through the way the stories are told, the unique angle is that it's not just a historical story on Pila Portia and exploits and what got her killed, but through Tabang's eyes, we have a lens of quite a big aspect of transgenerational trauma.
Yeah.
And intergenerational trauma. Have families that have been affected by gross human rights violations, have they healed? Most of the cases in the 6 stories, no. So the child, who's obviously an adult, who was a child when the mother or father was killed, today is an adult. But through their eyes, it becomes a very present story, and in many ways also becomes a future story, because what is their future? What did their mother or father die for?
Is it fair to also surmise that to some degree the documentary also casts light on the failures of the NPA? Because I did read somewhere that from the sort of hundreds of cases that were presented at the TRC, only really a handful have been investigated all these years later.
Yes, exactly. I'll give you an example. The Mabalani family, Matthews Mabalani, was thrown out of the 10th floor of John Foster Square Police Building, now Joburg Central, in 1977. His father, he passed away at 96 years of age, only wanting answers and only wanting justice. The mother passed away. 2 brothers have passed away. Steve Mabalani, who narrates the story, he just wants answers. His son says, please, can there be answers before my father passes away? So, that shows you, in a sort of microscopic level, the failure of the NPA to fast-track prosecutions.
There's something here, Enver, also. There's something restorative, I think, about allowing space for these kinds of stories to be told.
Yes, in the process of making the films, it's been quite a collaborative process, but also, get you to trust me to tell the story, and so the families that have viewed the episodes so far, because you can't just tell them watch it on this time and this day because of the content. So we've had this process where we've viewed the documentary with the counselor present, and if you were there and me as a filmmaker, it made me extremely, the word, I'm searching for the word, but I felt that I'd done something right, because the joy on their faces, and the almost like thank you for giving my mother or my father recognition.
Because truthfully, I think those of us who are fortunate in the sense, right? We come from a generation that didn't have to experience this brutality. We didn't have to experience this kind of devastating loss. But one can only imagine that if you are directly linked or directly in the lineage of a family who's lost on behalf of all of us and has no answers, you have no conclusions, there's that consistent what if, or that consistent why, the questions that never gets answered, and you almost want to be seen. You want South Africans to see and hear the fact that you live with this loss, you live with this darkness and this gaping hole of emptiness that, and no one recognizes it.
Precisely. If you watch the documentaries and if you meet the families, you get that exact feeling. You realize that you can't move forward unless you address these issues of the past. These families can't move forward, and it's very, very noticeable. It's in their body language, in the way they talk. So never must anyone say, let's forget about the past. Let's look forward. I mean, there are thousands of families. There's over 20,000 families that went to the TRC. So, it's a lot of South Africans, and that was just for a certain period of time. So a lot of South Africans have been affected by this, and have not really healed. So it's an ever-present thing.
Absolutely. It is premiering today. I use the word premiere loosely at the Nelson Mandela Foundation, if I'm not mistaken, tonight, truth be told.
Correct. So the first episode on Pila, Portia and Rwanwe premieres at the Nelson Mandela Foundation in conjunction with the Foundation for Human Rights. They've been very supportive of the documentaries. But the public must look out from Monday, the 4th of March, on SABC3 at 9 p.m. is when the series episode 1 starts, which is the Pila story. Yeah. And then 6 after that. Yeah.
Oh, lovely stuff. At least we get to see it as well. I was secretly hoping that you don't say that you're about to do all the independent film festivals before you come to us. I'm very happy about that. Enver Samuel, thank you so much for taking the time today and for telling these very important stories. Filmmakers, award-winning filmmakers like yourselves are definitely needed in archiving South Africa's very painful and evolving history. That was Enver Samuel. He is a documentarian filmmaker, an award-winning documentarian filmmaker. Truth Be Told is a 6-part series, and as you heard, it's premiering tonight at the Nelson Mandela Foundation in collaboration with the Foundation for Human Rights. But the rest of us, you and I, get to see episode 1 all the way through to episode 6 every single Monday right here on SABC3 at 9 p.m., kicking off on the 4th, which is next Monday. So let's diarize that. Kids Corner is coming up.
Oh
friends, and welcome to Nali Bali. Do you know that littering doesn't only have a negative impact on us as humans, but it also threatens sea life? Many species, including seals, dolphins, and sea turtles, can get entangled in plastic debris and fishing nets that are lost in the sea. Most of the entangled animals do not survive, as they cannot get up to the water surface to breathe, escape from predators, and feed themselves. So do not litter, and also remind your friends and family members. Let's listen to today's story called The Red Mist, written by Bandile Sikwane. But before we listen to today's story, let's all get up and dance! Most of the time, the creatures of the sea live in harmony with each other. But sometimes when the red algae takes over too much of the reef, they use up all the air in the water and there's not enough air left over in the water for the lobsters to breathe. To save their children from the red mist, the lobster elders think it's a good idea to send them on the great walkout to look for air on land. And this is a huge mistake because lobsters cannot live on land for a very long time. Now, Lerato and Lunga know that lobsters can't live on land, so they came up with a plan. Lerato tells Lunga,
"When the elders send us away from the reef, I'll drop sparkly shells all along the path that they take us. As soon as the elders turn back, we will follow the sparkly shells all the way back to our reef."
And that is exactly what Lerato and Lunga do. As soon as the elders leave them to crawl out of the sea onto the land, they turn around and follow the sparkly shells all the way back home. But a few days later, the elders tried to take the young lobsters away from the reef again. Lerato did not have any sparkly shells to drop along the path, so Lunga comes up with a new plan. He asked the jellyfish,
"Please, will you follow us until the elders leave us near the land and then bring us back home again? Will you guide us back home to the reef with your tail lights?"
The jellyfish feels sorry for the young lobsters and bring them all safely back home to the reef. The elders are dismayed.
"It's for your own good to crawl out of the water. You will be safe on land where you can breathe the air. None of the other lobsters that left the reef during the red mist ever came back. Why do you insist on coming home?"
They say the elders did not understand that the land is just as dangerous for lobsters as the red mist. So the elders try for the third time to lead the lobsters away from the reef and towards the land. This time, Lerato and Lunga find it really difficult to come up with a plan to find their way back home to the reef. They do not have any sparkly shells, and the jellyfish have floated away on the sea currents. So they scatter some krill crumbs along the path away from the reef. Unfortunately, some prawns came that way and eat the delicious krill.
What a delicious treat,"
says the prawns. When the young lobsters try to find their path back home, there's no krill trail to follow.
Oh no, we're lost at sea.
We'll never be able to find our way back.
What
now.
are we gonna do?
I don't know.
They say sadly. After wandering around on the seabed, the lobsters are very hungry. Just when they think that they will die of hunger, they see what looks like a little house filled with yummy delights. The lobsters rush to the little house, go in through the little door, and eat to their heart's content. Suddenly, the little house starts moving. The lobsters try to get out, but the way out is blocked.
"Help! We're trapped! Please help us!"
shouts Lunga. But no one comes to free the lobsters. "Shh," says Lerato.
"I think I have a plan."
As the giant grabs the little house to lift it out of the water, Lerato snaps off his great big thumb with her huge pincer. From under the waves, the lobsters can hear the giant scream. Then the giant drops the cage and disappears. The great big thumb sinks down and lands on the bottom of the reef. Slowly, the lobsters work together to escape from the little house. As they stand around wondering what to do next, they realize that they cannot go home again.
We will have to find a new home for ourselves,
says Lunga.
A place where there's enough food and fresh air for everyone.
So that's what they did. All the other lobsters migrate to the new reef, and they live there without fear of the red mist and giants who trap lobsters in little houses. And so we come to the end of another Nali Bali story time. Today's story was called The Red Mist, written by Bandile Sikwane. Did you know that reading and telling stories to children at home can help them do better at school? If you want free stories to read to your children or for your children to enjoy on their own, visit Nali Bali website www.nalibali.org or Mobi site www.nalibali.mobi. You will find stories in 11 South African languages, as well as tips for reading and sharing stories with your children to grow their potential. Also look out for the bilingual Nali Bali Reading for Enjoyment supplements with great children's stories and activities available in newspapers. Nali Bali, it starts with a story.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
The top stories this hour: SA aiming to be off the grey list by next year, and eThekwini to restore water supply this afternoon. Very good afternoon. National Treasury says that South Africa has addressed 5 of the 22 action items set out by the Financial Action Task Force last year. The country had aimed to be off the grey listing by 2025. These relate to criminalizing terrorist financing and increasing the resources of anti-money laundering investigations, amongst others. Nothando Makutulela reports.
In a statement, National Treasury says while South Africa is on track to address all the outstanding action items, it remains a tough challenge to address all 17 of the remaining action items by February 2025. Treasury says all relevant agencies and authorities will need to continue to demonstrate significant improvements and ensure that such improvements are sustained.
Stats SA has released the Producer Price Index for January, which rose to 4.7% year-on-year, compared with 4% in December. The PPI is a measure of inflation at the factory gate and is considered an indicator of where consumer inflation, or CPI, will be heading in the coming months. The higher PPI figure could indicate that any rate cuts could be on hold for a little while longer. The Auditor General has raised concerns with the Public Enterprises Committee that she has not received the report on the revised valuation of SAA's assets. AG Tsakani Maluleke and Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan appeared before the committee on the airliner's financial results and the SAA Takatso deal. Committee Chairperson Kaya Makaka, however, would not disclose what happened in their meeting with Gordhan. Firefighters at Nelson Mandela Bay continue to battle the raging veld fire in Sardinia Bay, with the focus shifting to saving the domestic animals in the area. The persistent strong winds continue to be a challenge for the firefighters as they try to contain the blaze. These residents have expressed concerns about their properties and the domestic animals in the area.
I think the biggest fear we have right now is all our animals, making sure that we're able to either evacuate them in time, being notified in time to evacuate them, and just keeping our animals safe. That's literally our main goal in Sardinia Bay.
But yeah, it's not just our property, it's down the road. My friend's horse is just down the road, so from here on we're heading down there to go check on her horse.
The eThekwini municipality says it expects to complete the replacement of air valves on a section of a major pipeline to supply areas in the north of Durban Metro with water by late this afternoon. This comes as several parts in the north of Durban, including Phoenix, Verulam and Otongati, have been without water for some time. The municipality says in a statement that the supply of tap water will be restored after reservoirs have filled up sufficiently. It says it is also using technology to detect leaks and is busy installing equipment to keep track of the water pressure. This announcement comes after the water minister met with irate residents last month. And Russian President Vladimir Putin has delivered his annual State of the Nation address in Moscow, explicitly referring to his country's 2-year-long invasion of Ukraine as a war. He had in the last 2 years repeatedly insisted that it be called a special military operation. Putin claims that Moscow has the initiative in the conflict.
We have repelled the aggression of international terrorism. We have preserved the unity of the country. We have stopped it being torn apart. We have supported our brothers and sisters and their desire to be with Russia.
Recapping the top story at 2, National Treasury says South Africa has addressed 5 of the 22 action items set out by the Financial Action Task Force last year. For SAFM News, Kimudupi Makhalemeli.
Diable Noir can't wait to demonstrate to Sekhukhune United that what they did to them in Limpopo will not prevail in Brazzaville. Meanwhile, Babina Noko targets another victory against Yakadiamama when they close the group stage curtain. This is the CAF Confederation Cup. Catch Diable Noir FC and Sekhukhune United FC on Sunday 3 March at 6 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Mangekazi ndilo Shomi samathamba lelokuthula Oh nyawuza thahla ndaye ndilo Oh ndilo When I greet my fathers, both living and departed, I say, Shamangekazi. Mambondo. Kamaku.
It is Zonke Tigana coming through with Ndilimpondo. That is how we kick off the second hour of the show. The call is out, and there is a loose petition for her to announce some kind of tour dates for 2024. I call it a loose petition because it is a very strong suggestion being mobilized on social media by some of her fans. But she's one of those touring artists, so she tends to do shows quite a bit. She's quite the performer, so I'm sure she'll announce something at some point in time. So in the second hour of the show, we're going to be looking at ICASA's revision of their political advertisement regulations for the upcoming elections. We know that we are leading into the national and provincial elections come May 29. Hope you are registered, by the way. The last registration day was about a week ago, and I hope you utilize that. Even if you are undecided about what to do come May 29, hopefully you've given yourself at very least the chance and the opportunity to be able to cast your X by ensuring that you are on the voters' roll. And we are gearing up, like I say, for the national provincial elections, and the Independent Communications Authority, which is ICASA. So they've released an amendment to their regulations that are governing the national and provincial party elections, broadcast and political advertisements. And to tell us more about that is Councillor Nompucuko Nontombane, who is a community chairperson, or committee chairperson rather, and she's going to walk us through some of these regulations. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm very well. Thank you, Bridget, and thank you for inviting us for the interview.
Only but a pleasure. Maybe let's start at the beginning, and let's start by understanding, in terms of these regulations, where do they stand now in their current format, and what has been amended by way of either being included or perhaps revised and redacted from the current regulation?
Okay, so what we've done is we've published in the Gazette the final set of regulations, which will then inform what will be happening during the preparation by political parties and independent candidates, as well as broadcasters for the upcoming national elections. And we have made some changes. This is something that we do every time that we have elections. We go back and review the regulations that we previously amended to check whether they are still relevant for purposes of the next election year. So we use the ECA, the Electronic Communications Act, in terms of the relevant provisions on the regulation of political advertisements, as well as the political election broadcasts. And we read those provisions with the regulations as they would be applicable. And in the case of 2024, it's the regulations that were published on the 26th of February that would be applicable for the upcoming national elections.
Yeah.
And in terms of the review, so in the current ones, what we've done is to look at mostly the applicable timelines that we've had previously in the previous regulations. But what we've done is to also make the current regulations more inclusive in terms of the use of the wording. For example, given that we now have independent candidates that will also be contesting the elections, instead of having wording like party election broadcast, we are using political election broadcast, which is a term that we thought is more inclusive, is not looking like it's aligned towards a political party or a particular way of looking at the regulation of elections.
And the role in as far as ICASA is concerned here, the role of ICASA in ensuring that we actually uphold a democratic system throughout the media.
What we do with the regulations, we set clear rules, if I can put it like that, as well as applicable standards, particularly for broadcasters and political parties and independent candidates. And we do this in order to create a certainty so that when the election period comes and when the political advertisements and the political election broadcasts are run, political parties are clear that this is what is expected of them, as well as political parties and independent candidates are also clear that this is what is expected of them, so that they are doing whatever they need to do during the election period within a set of guidelines that are clear and they have been clearly communicated to them. And we do this because this is what is required of us in terms of the Act, the ECA, as I indicated earlier. And also, I think more than just regulating in terms of providing consistency as well as a clear set of rules for broadcasters and political parties and independent candidates. We do this also to make sure that the public is also in a way protected in terms of what is communicated to them, as well as fairness in terms of the coverage of the political parties during that period. And so we do that also to make sure that each party is held accountable and they are clear in terms of what is expected, each one of them, as well as the members of the public as well, are well informed in preparation for the elections.
My apologies. I understand that obviously, these regulations as outlined by ICASA would sort of cover the media landscape, broadcasters, political parties, as you said, and independent candidates. But are there any categories that are exempted from adhering to the regulations, or perhaps have a different consideration of regulations?
So the way that we have the provisions in the Act is such that the SABC, as a public broadcaster, has to run the political election broadcasts. But any other broadcaster outside of the SABC can also do so if they choose to do so. All that is required of them is to inform ICASA that they will be running political election broadcasts as well as the political adverts if they choose to do so. And in that way, we are able to monitor that they are also following the rules and the regulations as set out in the regulations that have been published. But there is no obligation on them to run these PEBs or these political adverts. It's only the SABC that is obliged in terms of the law to do this.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that. And when we talk about political adverts, we're talking about, just so that we're all on the same page, are we making reference to political adverts as sort of scheduled by political parties and independent candidates?
So a political advertisement is really an advertisement that a political party or an independent candidate will have, and the only difference is that they pay for it, and they would get into a negotiation with the broadcaster in terms of the wording of that PA as well as the length of that PA. We don't get involved in terms of what the wording is, except that the political party or the independent candidate would obviously have to follow the proper guidelines in terms of what is permissible. So, for example, the nature of information that is in that PA is not, for example, offensive or any other matter that is not necessarily required for anything that is broadcast for public consumption. But it's really an advertisement which advances the interests of the political party or the independent candidate that is concerned that they pay for to the broadcaster. That is really all it is. Whereas your political election broadcast is a free slot that, as the regulator, we will make available based on our discussions with the broadcasters that are participating in terms of running these PEBs. So we'll make that slot available, and then if a political party or an independent candidate chooses to use that slot, then they would obviously follow the regulations that we have published. That is all.
And are these slots, Nomputuga, are these slots allocated in accordance to the sort of size or dominance of a political party, or is it just a standardized, every party and independent candidate is offered the same amount of slots, and whether or not they choose to utilize it is
Bridget,
up to them?
I've lost you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Hello? Okay, let's try and get Unomputuga back on a different line. We lost a bit of reception there as she helps us understand some of the regulations, updated regulations by ICASA, who've reviewed the political advertisement regulations for the upcoming elections. And we've got Unomputuga back on the line. I was saying, Councillor Uguti, these political election broadcast slots, are they allocated by sort of size of, the word escapes me now, size of the political parties, or are they standardized, allocated amounts of slots given to every political party and independent candidate, and whether they choose to utilize them or not is up to them?
So what happens is, after we've published the regulations, we then issue a notice to all the broadcasters that may want to run the PEBs. And once we have the number of them, then we are able to have a sense of the number of slots that will be available. And these slots are then made available to political parties and independent candidates. And it's difficult to say how many slots will be made available to who until we have the final list of political parties as well as independent candidates from the IEC. But it's not about the how big a political party is. It's an allocation of slots based on the number of political parties and independent candidates that will be participating in the running of the PEBs. Okay. So it has nothing to do with how big a political party is or who the independent candidate is. What we do is, in the regulations, there is an annexure there that looks at the allocation, which takes into account the political party's size as well as the number of seats that they hold. And the way that we do that is so that we are equitable in terms of the obviously, if you are a political party that has been running or been in the you have been a political party for a while, obviously you have the number. So what we've done is to review that table to make sure that the independent candidates, because they will be running for the first time, they are not discriminated in terms of the number of slots that they will be getting. That is the only thing that we have done. So in the regulations, we've made it clear that the bias is really not to be unfair towards your smaller parties or your independent candidates. But the Act is clear that this is a process that will be done equitably. It's obviously not going to be equal, but there's a specific way that we allocate it depending on the number of slots that will be available, as well as the parties that we have to accommodate in those slots.
I got you. And let's double back to the media's role in obviously adhering to ICASA's regulations, especially when it comes to the election period. What are some of the consequences that are in place? Should they be straying or not adhering to the regulations of broadcast?
So the regulations do, okay, first of all, there's a process where anyone can lodge a complaint should there be non-compliance with the regulations. And those complaints are dealt with through our CCC, and they are dealt with as a matter of agency, because the election period and the period within which complaints have to be investigated is very limited. But there is also a fine that, not only a fine, the CCC, if it looks at a complaint, it would obviously look at the circumstances that led to the conduct or the failure to comply with the regulations, and then they would determine what the corrective measure should be. It could be a desist order, it could be a penalty, it could be a broadcaster issuing an apology. It depends on what the circumstances are. But there are ways in which we look at the way that broadcasters are complying. And we also have a team that we put in place that is specifically looking at compliance of broadcasters during that election period. So in order to also just make sure that we don't only wait for complaints to come, if we are able as ICASA to pick up on circumstances where there is non-compliance, we are also able to deal with those.
And have you experienced challenges in previous years in as far as monitoring, of course, media's broadcast and their compliance during these times?
Well, I think challenges will always be there. Some we may not even foresee. And particularly for this the upcoming elections, because it's likely to be a highly contested election. But in terms of the challenges, it might be that, for example, what we don't necessarily pick up on everything that is happening until it is coming to us, and then we have to look at it. And also, I think one of the challenges, because the period is limited, so everything has to be done within a specified period of the election period, which puts a lot of constraint in terms of what it is that can be done. But obviously, based on previous experience, we are putting measures in place to make sure that whatever we've learned from the past, we are making sure that it doesn't necessarily happen. And even if there are things that we may not foresee, that we are able to deal with those and deal with those within the timeframes that we have in terms of dealing with issues or matters that arise during the election period.
Yeah. Just sneaking in a last one, I'm just thinking from the outside looking in, we don't have too many issues in as far as how our media covers elections and the election period? Or perhaps we do, and the corrective measures are just swift and fast?
Sorry, I don't understand that question. What is it?
I was saying, just looking from previous years, from the outside looking in, as South Africa, we don't have too many issues in as far as our media covering elections and the election period in a just and fair manner.
Well, I think for ICASA, in terms of the issues that we've really dealt with in the past, is really been non-compliance with the regulations. Those are the ones that we mostly deal with. But in terms of the fairness and other issues that may arise, we have guidelines that we have put in place, and broadcasters should be familiar with those guidelines in terms of what it is that is expected of them in making sure that the elections are fair, and also there is a fair coverage for all political parties and independent candidates that are involved. And we expect that the same would still be adhered to in the upcoming elections.
Lovely stuff. Nomputugo, thank you so much for the time. That was a councillor, Nomputugo Nontombani, and she is the committee chairperson there at ICASA. It's just gone 2:30, and it's time for us to catch up with Medupi.
Thank you very much, Bridget, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, a member of the ANC Economic Transformation Committee, Kosian Tsuramokhopa, says the rehabilitation and expansion of the country's electricity system will stimulate demand for industrial jobs. National Treasury says South Africa has addressed 5 of the 22 action items set out by the Financial Action Task Force last year. And British Armed Forces Minister James Heappey has offered to meet the family of a Kenyan woman who was allegedly killed by a soldier from the UK in 2012. Details of these and other stories at the top of the hour.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.6 FM in Palabora. You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
All right, so we've got about 30 minutes to the show, and of course it is the 27th of February. And I did say earlier on that it is a leap year, and one of the ladies here in studio, she highlighted the fact that on this particular day, every couple of years, women have the liberty to propose to men on this day. So if there's somebody that you've got a keen eye on, and you want to ask them on a date, you want to ask them for a meal, you want to master the courage, this is the day for you. Or if you are in a relationship and you want to go ahead, this is the day for you. In fact, it goes as far back as back into the days of saints. And I'm told that it goes against the Greek and Ukrainian model, but it's very much so an Irish custom that started with Saint Bridget, by the way, who was the one who initiated this particular situation that we find ourselves in. And she thought that it's only prudent that women didn't have to wait too long to propose, to get proposed to, but could take it upon themselves to propose to people. And so there was an agreement reached with St. Patrick that women can go ahead during the leap year and propose to two men. If you wanted a significant other, if you wanted a partner, if you were in a relationship and you thought it was taking too long, today is the day that you could propose. And I wonder if this is something that, I don't know, I'm very skeptical. I wonder if this is something that women in modern day, in the context of modern day living, actually do. On the 29th of February, during a leap year, do you actually go out and propose to people? It's something I would not do. In my old age, it's something that I would not. Maybe in my youth, with youthful effervescence and courage, I would consider it. But in my ripe old grown age, I certainly would not go out there proposing to anybody. 086 000 2032 061 410 4107 is the number that you can WhatsApp us on. Let's take a quick break.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Idiski Times journalist Letabo Khanyago. What does your gut feel tell you? Do you think Banyana have more than enough to be able to do the business, or is it going to be a really tough challenge?
I want Banyana to qualify for the Olympics. I feel that Banyana do have a stronger hand going into this, especially because also they're African champions and not just African champions. I feel like there's kind of like also between the two countries, we kind of have a lot to prove. Nigeria can always say we've won the AFCON for 9 times. It will be tough, but I'm going to do it.
I like your positivity. That's really great. Those matches, of course, in April, first week and second week of April.
Top Sport on SAFM. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
It is a leap year, 29th of February today, the year that you can master all the courage to go out there. Uzishelele wena self, if that is what you want to do. And I wonder if this is something that you would do. I mean, they tell me to ask you this, but then they shake their heads through the windows saying that this is something that they would not do. So then why would you expect other women to be the ones who go out and ask men to marry them or ask men on dates if it's something that you yourself would not do? Very interesting. 086 000 2032 is the number you can call us on, or 061 410 4107 is our WhatsApp line. Let's go to WhatsApp.
Hey, Bridget. So, yeah, I'm one of those guys whose ladies proposed to them. This happened quite some time ago, around 2015. So a friend of mine uploaded a picture of me and him as his DP on WhatsApp. And then she was a contact and she asked, Horio, who's this, whatnot. Asked for my numbers. And then he asked me, actually, like, yo, man, there's this hun. She's over here. She's asking about you. Can I give her your number? I wasn't seeing anyone at that time. And then I agreed. We started chatting and I got to know each other, and it's been amazing. It's been really awesome, So yeah, still together to this day. So yeah, I could say that's quite the fairy tale. But yeah, man, also want to take an opportunity to allow these ladies to let them know how they feel, maybe give them space, comfortable, and ladies also. We're just guys, man. We're not complicated. We're not anything wow. We're simple. If you are looking at us some certain way, let us know. We'd love to know. But yeah, that's my story.
Listen, I'm here for the advice, okay? I'm here for the advice. We always talk about equality and all the rest of it, and perhaps, we live in, it's 2024. So if you want to ask him, as you heard, they just guys. If you want to ask him, why not go ahead? 086 000 2032 or 061 410 4107. That is our WhatsApp line. Palisa out in Bloom. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm fantastic, thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, Palisa. I don't understand that.
What don't you understand?
Men are hunters. They will hunt. Not women should hunt the other way around. No. What about your dignity? Other people are not going to treat you the same. Especially the family. It's not working.
Palisa, can
Wait for your turn.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question? Of which generation are you? Are you Aus Palisa? Are you Me Palisa? Are you Jazz Palisa?
Me
Palisa, this is why.
Hi. Lama 2000, bashintshizinto man. Icon. What about your dignity? Let's talk about your dignity, how people are going to treat you there in your in-laws.
But we shall.
Hey, and then they're going to call you, you bring yourself. That's the name they're going to call you.
Thank you for sharing.
Let's stick to the rules. Let's stick to the rules. Men are hunters. They will chase you.
Yes.
And they will find you. Yes.
Thank you, Mepalisa. Thank you very much. I could just hear from that advice, Uti Mepalisa was from the generation of akwenziwa njalo unozisile uzilethe wena, you brought yourself. Let's go to WhatsApp and see what's on your mind there.
Hi, SAFM, this is Daniel Joshua Challen. Yes, in the days of old, the men should propose to the woman. Because today, in those days, if a woman proposed, they said she's a loose woman. Sorry to use those terms. But today, since women and men are on equal terms as far as human rights is concerned, and they have the same intelligence and same knowledge and everything, and why not, if they propose, it makes no difference whether the man proposes or the woman proposes. Because as a male, I will tell you, some male are still wet behind their ears and they can't catch up when a woman is making advances to them. Thank you and God bless you.
It's a generational thing. I keep saying it's a generational thing. I mean, they're both in agreement, right? Guti, men are hunters and men should do the pursuing. But you'll be challenged by the younger generation. They feel some other way. And to some large degree, millennials as well. My generation, millennials, it just depends on the person and the mood that you are asking them on that day, whether they are in agreement or not in agreement, whether they propose for themselves or propose to a guy or ask a guy on a date or not ask a guy on a date, because we can be very sort of non-committal to this conversation as millennials. But it's a generational thing. How would you feel if she asked you out on a date today? That girl that you've had a crush on for the longest time but haven't had the courage to ask her. If she picked up the phone, or as the youth say, if she slid into your DMs today and asks you for a date, would you be opposed to it or would you not be? Let's give you some time to think on it and revert back to us on 06141041007 is our WhatsApp line. Aldrin St. Pierre standing by.
Imagine if you could save time like you save money. A second here, a minute there. Type a little faster, walk a little faster. Or you could stop scrolling on the internet. Just think of all the hours you'll save. Now what if you could take all that time and invest it? Watch it grow. Until eventually, one day, you'd have so much time that you wouldn't know what to do with it all. But unfortunately, time doesn't work like that. It can't be stored or banked. And unlike money, you can't make it back. That's why after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time to do whatever you want to do, even if it is scrolling on the internet. Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
The FNB Stadium will be painted in black and white as well as gold and black on Saturday, 9 March. You can also be there. 2 lucky fans stand a chance to win a VIP experience at the Soweto Derby, including transport and a supporter's jersey of your choice, courtesy of SABC Sport. To enter this thrilling giveaway, rush to sabcsport.com and visit the competition page. Entries close on Tuesday, 5 March 2024. T's and C's apply. # We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Aldrin St. Pierre is in the house. How are you?
I'm good. How do you do?
I'm fantastic. I mean, I can't ask you, how would you feel about a woman shellering you? Because first,
they have been.
I'm sure. I mean, you're a good-looking man.
No, they have been. You know, one of the weirdest things is a couple of years ago, somebody DM'd me, and it went on for some time. A woman.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Hey, please donate your sperm.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like literally, like please, please, please. And at some point I was like, okay, maybe I should consider this. Maybe I should consider this, you know. She just wants an offspring that comes from me.
I'm deflated.
She wants my DNA running through her child's veins.
I'm deflated.
Yeah,
What's
then
coming
somebody
up
spoke me out of it. Like, what? You don't even know this person, but anyway.
Couldn't speak.
Okay, coming up on the show this afternoon, for the interview just after 5 o'clock, we continue our focus on the manifestos of political parties, and today we're focusing on the ANC's manifesto that they launched over the weekend, and we're zooming in on the economic proposals. We'll be in conversation with Dr. Josienso Sputla Ramohupa, who's an NEC member, and also a member of the Economic Transformation Subcommittee of the ANC. So he'll be joining us for that conversation. And then we're also looking at the court appearance of the 5 suspects linked to the murder of AKA as well as Tips. Interesting what transpired there in that courtroom, when they appeared there and they had their masks on, and the magistrate then said that they must actually remove their masks, which is interesting for me because there are several other cases where people have appeared and they didn't remove their masks. But remember that even with Makutuman, eventually, she was told that she needs to remove the scarf as well so that they can confirm that indeed it's her.
I liked him for doing that.
You liked him for doing that.
Yeah.
So now you actually can see who these people are, and maybe, you never know, maybe there's a family member there.
Face your victims.
Yeah. Well, allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly, yeah. And then also we're looking at the Cape Winelands fires that continue to ravage on. One of the stories that we're also focusing on SABC News, and just listening to some of the residents, the concerns that they have losing their property as well as their domesticated animals.
Shoo, crazy stuff. Lots on the agenda this afternoon. That's Aldrin St. Pierre today on Beyond the Headline, coming through at 3 until 6.
Teenage pregnancy is rife in South Africa. This is very alarming, with 1 in 4 girls under 20 years of age falling pregnant. The current stats released by Statistics South Africa indicate that more than 90,000 girls between 10 to 19 years of age gave birth between March 2021 to April 2022 in all 9 provinces. Why? Why is South Africa one of the highest globally in teenage pregnancy? No means no. Stop gender-based violence femicide now. SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
Bafana Bastard remember what transpired in Lubumbashi when they went down by a goal to 0 against the Ravens. They want to ensure their visitors walk away with sad faces when they meet in the final group stage contest. However, the DRC outfit are confident of another upset. This is the CAF Champions League. Catch Mamelodi Sundowns versus TP Mazembe on Saturday 2 March at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Good evening, Michael. I do not think it is good for a team that normally says it is a big team, Sundowns, to be struggling to have a venue that they can use to play the game against TP Mazembe. I think it is not good for the reputation of the game in the country. Or they should have an alternative venue for their games when it comes to tournaments like this. For them not to have an alternative venue means a lot, and it means that Sundowns is not a professional run as their supporters are claiming.
Top Sport on SAFM. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Wrapping up the show now in the final moments with Zakheni Dlamini, who's with SA Home Loans Director of Business Development. And of course, many South Africans we know don't own their own homes, which prevents them from creating wealth through property. And property, we know, is an asset that can improve generational wealth. It's got a lot of potential. But a lot of us are starting off on the back foot. How are you doing this afternoon, Zakheni?
Hi, Bridget. Doing well, thank you.
Fantastic.
And how are you doing?
We are great. Thank you for asking. That's the unfortunate part, is that the majority of South Africans, will never be in a position to own property, which means that they'll never be in a position to exploit everything that property has to offer by way of being an investment tool.
Yeah, it is a reality that it's tough, especially in an environment like this one with the interest rates having gone up in the past 18 to 24 months. And in as much as it's an aspiration for all of us, or the majority of us, we do think that there's reason to be hopeful that the challenges that we're going through now are going to ease as we move forward. We do think that the interest rates have peaked. And we think probably by about the second half of this year, things should be becoming more active. But that's not to take away from the realities of the challenges that many of us face in terms of accessing housing.
Absolutely. And those of us who are in a fortunate, I'm throwing around that word, those of us who are in a fortunate position to be able to be able to afford some kind of home loan or bond or opportunity to own a home, what are some of the trends perhaps, or the things that we should be on the lookout for, particularly in this first half of the year?
Yeah, Bridget, I think because we're in an environment where things are expensive, I think we should be, home loans it's cyclical. So interest rates go up and go down over time. Interest rates are a bit higher at the moment. So in solving the affordability picture, you can use some techniques. So for example, you can take a longer term home loan, say a 30-year home loan as opposed to 20 years. And that reduces the installment that you pay. Now, the discipline that becomes important is with your home loan, you are allowed to pay more towards the home loan when you can afford to. And that will reduce the term of the home loan. So whenever you've got extra, you should always pay extra. When you take a 30-year term, the idea is to not have a bond for 30 years, but to have an affordable installment for a short period of time. And when your affordability has improved, to pay more into the bond and be able to pay it within 20 years.
And that's a catch-22, right? Because typically the longer you have any kind of loan, the more you're paying in interest, which ultimately means the more you're paying for the item, unless, as you say, you have the discipline to put the measures in place to shorten that repayment time.
Yes, it's a discipline that should apply to all types of credit. It really is advice that we would give. We encourage our clients to try as much as possible to pay ahead of time. And, you can contact us and the other home loan providers and say, I want to increase my installment by this much. If you want to, or if you've got extra cash, you can put that in as and when it happens. The point is, you are not penalized in our country when you do that. Our laws protect you from that, so you're allowed to prepay without penalty, which is really a great position to be in.
Absolutely. And I think perhaps the other thing in terms of the other additionals, whenever we have these conversations about creating wealth from property or looking at the home loans and how to maximize on that or how to decrease sort of risk on home loans, we also never talk about the additional financial costs that come with the world of property and owning a property and things that people need to be considered of that are beyond just the monthly bond repayment.
Yeah, there is that. It's always important to take all those costs into account. And in doing your research, if you are not in a position of owning currently, you can go into calculators on our website, and it will tell you that in addition to paying the installment, you should also think about some of the cost line items like rates, like levies. So we've got a guide on that can be downloaded from our website, a home buyer's guide. I would encourage anyone who wants to know more about how to get onto the property ladder to download that. It will tell you about all the costs that you should look out for upfront while you're buying the property, and the costs that you can look forward to when you are a property owner. It's educational. We can plan and prepare for these things, but as you say, it's important to do that research and know what you're getting yourself into as a commitment.
And if you are perhaps thinking of you're looking at your first home, or maybe you're considering also adding into your property portfolio your second home, third home, what would be some of the advice that you would offer our listeners?
I think so. Those are two different, segments. I think let me start with I think for someone who isn't a property owner currently, my advice would be do your research. It's important to also save up. We do offer 100% loans that can cover the full cost of the property, but there will be other costs, things like attorney costs and moving costs and furniture. So you don't want to need to borrow for everything. So it's a good discipline to save up ahead of time while you do the research. The other important thing is to really think about the installment plus the other costs that you would be getting yourself into, and look at it as a total picture. Where we are now, Bridget, I guess in terms of the market, with higher interest rates, property prices haven't been growing very fast. So I would encourage the people that are interested to not take their eye off the market. Keep your eye on the market, do your research in terms of where you would want to buy, so that when the affordability position improves, you are able to move quickly.
Yeah.
You don't want to only start your research and saving up only when you've got to the point where affordability has improved.
That is some.
Sorry, go for it.
No, I was about to say that is some sage advice, and I think we'll bank it there for this afternoon, because I've also fast run out of time. But I appreciate you taking the moment to be with us. That was Zakheni Dlamini, and he is the Director of Business Development for the SA Home Loans. From myself and my team, we thank you so much for choosing to be in conversation with us today. Tomorrow is a Friday. Siyakekele is a little bit taking things nice and easy as we wrap up the week, and of course usher in March. We are leaving now, but I want to play out with some of your voice notes from our conversation a little while ago regarding the leap year and whether or not women should be proposing on February 29, the leap year. Is it something that you would do? Is it something that you would not do? I mean, we heard Mepalisa out in Bloemfontein emphatically saying no, and we wonder what your thoughts are on that. We'll see you tomorrow. But yes, thank you so much for always being a part of our fun and conversations right here on The Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. Inshallah, God willing, we get to do it again.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
You know what? This day, the 29th of Feb, would be a very interesting day if men were to be honest with their feelings. Men have a tendency to say, yes, I'll go out with you, even when they have no interest, even when they have a partner, just to avoid disappointing the woman or just to boost their ego. So, of course, not all men are like that, but mostly that is what happens. So, men, please just be honest. Tell me, no, sorry, I cannot go out with you. Then the day will be interesting. At the end of the date, we both decide whether to meet again or not. I mean, it should be that simple and exciting. Thank you, Bridget Anonymous.
Here, there, and everywhere. SA SAFM 105 FM in Pietermaritzburg. Beyond the headline on SAFM.
With the seventh suspect, is it known whether the person handed themselves over like the sixth suspect?
He did not hand himself over. I wouldn't say they handed themselves over. It was because our team was hard at work in tracing the suspects. We need to commend the Eswatini police for cooperating with us. They executed the warrant, and now it's a matter of extradition processes.
Brigadier Tlandamate is the spokesperson for the police, and this is in relation to the murder of Keenan, aka Forbes, as well as Tibelo Tips Mutswane.
Beyond the headline with Aldrin Sampier on SAFM. Weekdays 3 to 6 p.m. SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation. Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
The top stories this hour: Ramokgopa seeks to expand the country's electricity system, and 5 items ticked off as SA tackles the grey list. Very good afternoon. Member of the ANC Economic Transformation Committee, Khosiyanso Ramokgopa, says the rehabilitation and expansion of the country's electricity system will stimulate demand for industrial jobs. He says the priorities of the Energy Action Plan are already in line with the ANC's plans to resuscitate its industrialization strategy to create more jobs. Ramokgopa, who is also the electricity minister, says plans by the government to expand the country's transmission line and transition from combustion engines to electric vehicles are set to increase industrial jobs.
The success of our industrial policy is predicated on the existence of sufficient supply on the electricity side. So you know that we need to expand and modernize the transmission by about 14,000 kilometers in the next 10 years. And we know that the size of the ticket of investment that is required for us to be able to achieve the scale and proportions of that expansion is in the order of magnitude of about 400 billion rand. But we know that part of the major inputs for the expansion of transmission is the manufacturing of the wires, the towers. So